Hello and welcome to Talking Shop from Automotive Tales. On today's episode we're going to look at audio, because audio can really make or break a piece of automotive content. So this is Automotive Tales is going to take us on a dual carriageway and rev the nuts off the Volvo V60. So to help try and demonstrate the differences in audio capability, I am recording what you're watching now on the screen on 3 different cameras and 3 additional audio sources. So there's 6 audio recordings, 3 video recordings. And I'm going to read through some facts, some automotive facts, and we're going to drop in between the different audio sources so you can see what the different ones sound like, what's good and what's bad. So let's go. So what are all the different audio streams we're recording on? So the first and simplest is the audio on the device I'm recording the video on. So the native audio on the iPhone, in this case it's an iPhone 11, is pretty good. It will give you stereo sound, so you'll get 2 different signals when you put it into your editing software. And for most things it's actually okay, especially in this monologue one-to-one scenario. Now, if you are doing a dialogue with another person that might be stood on the other side of the camera, you have to be aware of the fact that that person might be stood closer or further away from the microphone than you are. So you might find yourself having to turn the volume up and down as each person is speaking, because you will get different gain rates. Tell me about your interest in Lotus. Where did that start from?
Quite an early age. So as I sort of said before, my dad's friend owned a Lotus Esprit.
Tell me about your interest in Lotus. Where did that start from?
Quite an early age. So as I sort of said before, my dad's friend owned a Lotus Esprit.
So the second and third audio streams we've got are both GoPros. One is in a waterproof case and one is in an open case. So that's the native audio you get when recording in a quiet environment with a GoPro. So this is the Hero 4 in its waterproof case. So you'll be familiar with these, it's fairly standard. This is the Hero 4 that's in an open case, so you can see a lot more of the devices exposed, including a little gap at the top for the microphone. So this should give much better sound. The next audio stream we've got is something called a Zoom recorder. So that's this little fella here. So it's a dedicated recorder. You can see the twin stereo microphones on the top. So that's great if you've got 2 people in dialogue. It means you get both sides of the conversation in pretty good sound quality. Or if you're just interviewing a single person, you can point this at them and get a nice stereo sound. I also use this for doing some of the drive-by shots, because you get approaching and departing sound, and you will hear the vehicle go from left to right or right to left. A handy little device. They last for an awfully long time. You can get days of sound recording on a single, I think it's just a 2 GB SD card in here. So the final 2 audio streams that we're using are what we call lavalier mics. So these are the tiny little fellas you can see down here, and there's 2 different types I'm recording with. The first of those is a fairly cheap and cheerful eBay special, using the Lightning connector and an Apple iPhone to record using just the voice recording app. In fact, you can see it recording away here, and you can see the peaks as I'm talking. The other is a slightly more advanced, so it's a Rode microphone, which also has the adapter to allow you to use it in the Zoom recorder, because smartphones and traditional headphone jacks are different, which we'll come into at a later point in the video. That is also plugged into another iPhone, recording with a voice recorder app. So top tip, if you do decide to go down the lavalier route, using an old iPhone is a perfect device for recording audio. So to try and demonstrate what the different audio streams will sound like, what's good and what's bad, I am going to read you some facts from my favourite little book. So we have in front of me Sniff Petrol's medium-sized book of boring car trivia, volume 1. So we're going to go from the top. The very first fact in the book happens to be one that is relevant to content on this channel. So Volvo was the first car maker to fit 6-figure odometers as a symbol of its faith in the longevity of its cars. Pretty cool fact. Just in case we didn't get through all 6 audio streams with that first fact, I have identified another interesting fact from Boring Car Trivia Volume 2. This relates to Rolls-Royce. The body shell of the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow was made by British Leyland. Shells were put together by British Leyland's Press Steel Fisher subsidiary in Cowley, and then transported to Crewe for final assembly. Pressed Steel had been making bodies for Rolls-Royce in Cowley from as early as 1949, and the arrangement continued until the end of the Silver Spirit production in 1997. So with a bit of luck, using those 2 facts I've read out from Sniff Petrol's Boring Car Trivia books, we've had the opportunity to see what the different types of audio stream are like in a studio environment, or in this case, in my office. So we'll do another set of experiments in another typical environment you might find yourself doing automotive content, in a car with some background noise, and I think that's where we'll hear some real differences in sound. So, over to the experiment. Okay, welcome to the experiment setup. As you'll see, I'm in the passenger seat of the car because there is 3 cameras, 4 if you include the dash cam, and 3 microphones attached to me. So I didn't think it was safe to drive, so thank you to Mrs. Automotive Tales, who is chauffeuring me. So the idea of this experiment is we'll do exactly what we did in the studio, and we'll try each of the different audio sources to see which cope with the background road noise the best. So I'm going to go back to my trusty books for some good facts. We'll run through those facts and see what it sounds like. So first I'm going to start off with a Volvo fact, again from the medium-sized book of Boring Car Trivia, Volume 1 from Sniff Petrol. So, prototypes of the 2001 Aston Martin Vanquish used Ford KA dashboard vents and rear lights from a Ford Cougar, but masked and with covers to hide their origins. When Ulrich Bez joined the company in 2000, his objection to these parts led him to sign off the money for more expensive Volvo dash vent and bespoke taillights. So, right now we are sitting at a set of traffic lights, so there is very minimal road noise, but there is still background noise from the engine. I suspect even the worst audio is probably okay at this point. The real test is once you've got some road noise. So, Mrs. Automotive Tales is going to take us on a dual carriageway and rev the nuts off the Volvo V60. Sticking with Volume 1, I have another Rolls-Royce fact for you. In the 80s, Rolls-Royce came up with a new 4-cam V8 5 litre to replace the 6 3/4 litre V8 in the Silver Shadow and the Silver Spirit. To test this, they installed it in a Chevrolet Caprice, on the basis that the Caprice was big enough to take the large V8, but unfamiliar enough on the UK roads that most people wouldn't clock that the engine wasn't in the right place should the bonnet have to be lifted. When the engine project got cancelled, the Caprice Mule was sold off. It's rumoured that this car still exists hidden in a shed somewhere in the north of England. So if you happen to know where that is, stick us a comment in the comments below. Maybe we can go do some archaeology. Okay, back to the studio. So I mentioned before about being careful about the jacks you plug a lavalier microphone in. So the one I'm talking on now is plugged in through the lightning connector, which is fairly self-explanatory. However, if you do get a smartphone microphone like the Rode Smart Lav Plus, which is what I use, it's about a £50 microphone, really good quality. It comes with something called a TRRS connector, which is specific to smartphones. So I don't know if you can see on here, so it's a standard sort of 3.5mm jack, but it's got 4 sections to the plug. That's great for your smartphone, but you can't plug that into a traditional recording device like the Zoom. So they use the standard TRS headphone jack, same as you get on your normal stereo headphones for your hi-fi or for your computer. So that has a slightly simplified version of the same jack, which only has 3 segments on the connector. So do make sure, if you are buying one of these really nice lavalier mics, a Smart Lav Plus being the prime example, that you get yourself a little adapter cable. So that's this little chap here. So that converts your 4-segment TRRS connector to a 3-segment TRS connector. The important thing about this is you can fit the TRRS connector into the headphone socket and the line in socket on the Zoom recorder, but you will get distorted sound. It will cause all sorts of problems because it's got that extra connector on it. So do make sure you are very careful of that when using the different microphones. So, how to summarise? We have looked at a lot of different ways of recording audio. And one thing that we definitely know is using a GoPro in a waterproof case is not going to give you decent audio to use on a video. So we can discount that. The GoPro in an open case wasn't actually too bad, and in the studio environment, that's pretty acceptable sound. In the car with the background noise, it's okay, but you can certainly do a lot better. Okay, we went on then to look at the smartphone and the Zoom H1 recorder, which I know that looks like a troll, but it's got a little hedgehog on at the moment, which helps to reduce wind noise when you're recording outside. So the Zoom gave us pretty good quality sound. I had to turn the sound recording down a bit to stop any clipping of the audio and then add that gain back in post-process. But the quality of sound was actually pretty good, and it gives you a stereo sound recording. So not bad, but when attached to the windscreen of the car, there was still a little bit of background noise. Much the same story with the smartphone. So it brings us on to the Lavalier mics. So we have one cheap unbranded one and the Rode Smart Lav, which is the one I'm using right now. These proved much, much better, reducing background noise almost completely in the car experiment and giving us a slightly crisper, richer sound in the studio. Now clearly the best thing you can do is record as many audio sources as possible, because you can always mix and match, and if one of them comes out terrible, well, it's not the end of the world. So my top tips are to get yourself a Lavalier mic. You can record on a second-hand smartphone, that's what I'm doing right now, but another top tip is make sure this smartphone is set to flight mode. If you don't do that, you might get some crackling and interference if you receive messages. And worst case scenario, you receive a phone call and it interrupts the recording altogether. Tell me what's special about the Volvo 850 T5R. So my last top tip is if you are recording two audio streams, you must have a way of syncing the audio. When you put both audio streams into your editing software, trying to play lip sync catch up without any way of referencing the two together is very difficult. Now, you can use a clapperboard like I've got in the background here, or you can simply use a clap to give you a spike in the audio. That's enough that it will show up in your editing software. You can align the two spikes together and you've got your lip sync. Dead easy. Well, that's all from this episode of Talking Shop. I hope you enjoyed the experiments and you liked the video. If you did, do please like, share and subscribe, and keep checking back to Talking Shop from Automotive Tales for more hints and tips on how to create automotive content. See you next time.